Number 10. Crusader. Crusader is the daughter of X-Men team member Rogue and Avenger Captain America. I know, a weird combination. But in the reality of Earth 9811, these two ended up together after the heroes and villains on Battleworld decided to call a truce. Remaining there, they settled down and raised families, putting their differences aside. I'm not sure how their relationship worked, with Rogue not really being able to touch people and all at this point, or how she had a child considering that, but perhaps, like on Earth 616, she eventually was able to work through the trauma causing this side effect of her powers. Or perhaps the Captain America of Earth 9811 was immune to her involuntary energy and power draining effects. Either way, Sarah is their daughter. She gets much of her power from her mother, or rather she gets much of her power from the power her mother had absorbed in her day, meaning that Sarah is super strong, durable, and can fly. She is also considered worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer and wields her father's shield. Number 9. Wolverine. I really wanted to put Laura Kinney higher up on this list because, well, I love her so much, but unfortunately the psionics are just always pushing some of my favorite and most powerful characters further down on these lists. Those psionics. Oh well. Laura Kinney as X-23 and now Wolverine is still one of the most powerful children of the X-Men around. Some argue that she is more clone, while others argue that she is more biological offspring of Logan, but in reality, she's kind of a bit of both. She was created as a female clone of Wolverine after his genetic material was combined with that of her creator, scientist Sarah Kinney. Sarah noticed that there were damage spots basically in the samples of Logan's genetic material that they had, which was why their cloning process had been unsuccessful up to this point, and so she used her own genetic material to patch those rough spots, which made Laura a female clone. Sarah was forced to carry Laura to term as a surrogate by her jealous colleague Xander Rice, as punishment for even creating the female clone to begin with, a strategy that admittedly had not been approved. Laura has powers similar to her father. She has a regenerative healing factor and was also trained from birth to be a skilled fighter, bodyguard, and assassin. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more children of the X-Men, there are a lot out there in the multiverse. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality of 13729. Yeah, sadly Storm and T'Challa have never had a child together in the main continuity. I know, it's a bit of a bummer. Unless they had like a real secret child that we just don't know about yet, but I doubt it. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm, that she's a skilled combatant as well. As while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she is also an extremely skilled fighter. And if she's Black Panther's daughter, then she should definitely be a skilled fighter. I mean, you got two amazing parents that are both amazing fighters, so just saying. Number 7. Charles Xavier II. Charles Xavier II is the son of Charles Xavier and Mystique, if you can believe that. I know, it's pretty shocking. Charles Xavier II was technically born into the reality of Earth 616, where we later find out that while Mystique actually took the form of Moira when giving birth, Charles actually knew that he was in a relationship with Raven, so it wasn't like a trick of hers. They were actually just wanted to be together, I guess. This version of Charles, however, is an all grown up one from the alternate future of Earth 13729. When his powers first manifested, he accidentally killed his adoptive mother and ended up later joining forces with his half-brother Reyes, another child of Mystique's sired by Wolverine, another child of the X-Men. Charles Xavier II has a brilliant and conniving mind, and like his father, is an immensely gifted telepath, capable of using his powers to bend others to his will. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and while you might not think of Magneto as being an X-Men, considering, you know, he started out as an X-Men villain, he has also worked with the team before and even served as a member himself. Heck, at one point he was in charge of the whole New Mutants crew, let's not forget that. Magneto may have some questionable methods when it comes to getting justice that put him on the spectrum of villain, but I think at the end of the day, he's just trying to do what's best for mutants. Or at least what he thinks is best for mutant kind. Polaris, like her father, also has magnetic-based powers, which, like her father, are also pretty impressive. Polaris is considered an alpha level mutant and recently got to join the X-Men team herself after being elected to join them in the Krakoan X-Men elections. Psychic elections. Imagine if we could all just vote psychically. That would be awesome. That would be so much easier. You would just like sit down and you'd be like, who do I want to vote for? Done. Number 5. Cable. Cable is the son of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, non-X member Madeline Pryor, who later becomes the villain known as the Goblin Queen, and another X-Man's, Jean Grey, who kind of becomes like an adoptive mother but who also possesses Madeline's memories of raising baby Christopher. because comics. Cable is Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, often referred to as just Nathan Summers or really just Cable, although back in the day we did know him as Baby Christopher. Cable as a baby was kidnapped by Apocalypse and infected with the techno-organic virus. This is the only thing that makes him weak-ish, but really he is still amazingly strong as he can even fend off that virus, containing it to one side of his body using his psionic powers. That in and of itself is pretty impressive, as the techno-organic virus is generally known for being, well, unstoppable. Even with his psionic powers mainly preoccupied, Cable is still a hard one to beat, as he has so many combatant-based skills that he brings to the table, and he is also an experienced time traveler besides. Number 4. Rachel Summers. Yes, get ready, because many of the most powerful X-Kids out there just happen to be Summers related, so yeah, get ready for that. Honestly, I've always wanted to do a video just to explain the complicated nature that is the Summers and Gray family tree, which honestly is a lot, and it's very timey-wimey. Rachel herself is one of those very complex kids of theirs. She is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers from the alternate Earth of 811. In that reality, she was made into a hound, a weapon used to hunt down mutants, even being one herself. Rachel is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic who also has the ability to chronoskim and manipulate time, even traveling through it. Rachel is also known for being an avatar of the Phoenix, at one time actually considered the true avatar for it, but then later having the power sort of dialed down to a mere echo of it. So she was no longer the true avatar, they were just like, you just have a thing, and it's not even like the real Phoenix Force, but it's like a version of it. Still, the seeming piece or echo of the Phoenix Force that resides within her has been known to flare up from time to time, or her connection to the Phoenix Force, however we want to see that, occasionally boosting Rachel to an off-the-charts level of power. But like I said, that doesn't happen all the time. Number 3. Hope Summers. Hope is the adopted daughter of Cable, who was originally known as the Mutant Messiah Baby. Cable saved Hope from Bishop, who basically wanted to destroy her. In Bishop's reality, the Mutant Messiah would end up causing the event that led to the oppression and persecution of mutants. However, in Cable's reality, the Mutant Messiah would grow up to become a savior, so you can see why these two were opposed on this topic. For the X-Men of Earth 616, the Mutant Messiah was the first new mutant to have been born since basically M-Day, and so she brought hope to the mutants of the 616 reality. Cable body slided with Hope to another time to raise her in safety. He would end up naming Hope after her adoptive mother, his love who died, Hope, and she got the Summers name from Cable himself. But although she looks a lot like Jean, she actually has no biological relation to the Summers or the Gray families, at least not that we know of. Hope's mutant abilities allow her to copy the powers of anyone within a certain range. Hope also gains access to these powers without struggling at all to use them, receiving them basically at their peak level and with the auto knowledge basically of how to use them. So if you're like, oh, she's gotta like figure it out, no, she's just like instant god mode with those powers basically. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. Wanda is known for being one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. She has used her powers to completely warp reality the world over, and her chaos magic has pulled off other immensely world-changing feats, such as flipping the alignment of all major heroes and villains in the comics during the events of Axis. Initially, her chaos magic powers were believed to be somewhat mutant in origin. In fact, they were kind of presented initially as like Jinx-like mystical mutant abilities during her first appearances. However, we've since learned that both Wanda and her superpowered brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, were never really mutants at all, nor were they related to Magneto. However, they still spent a good amount of their life around Magneto, who secretly believed them to be his children, and then another good amount of time thinking that he was their actual father, until it was revealed that this was all due to manipulation by the High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary just coming in and messing pretty much everybody up when it comes to their backstories and origins. Wanda herself has never really gotten along with the X-Men, especially since the events of M-Day, but she is still considered, I think, a part of Magneto's family, and a powerful one at that, regardless of her status as a mutant or a non-mutant. I know there are some people out there that want to be like, it never happened, but like, they still spent a lot of time together thinking that they were family, so I think we can still count it, friends. Also, make Wanda a mutant again. Do it. Make it happen. Give me Wanda and Quicksilver back. Number 1. X-Man. X-Man is Nathaniel Gray, the lab-born child made by combining the genetic materials of both Jean Grey and Cyclops. So basically like Cable, but if he had been made perfectly by villain Mr. Sinister. He actually hails from the alternate reality of AOA, Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295. Here, Sinister created him to use as his own weapon, but of course, Nate being so powerful, managed to escape Sinister and instead ended up being raised by Forge of Earth 295. He is considered one of the most powerful mutants of all time, which would also make him one of the most powerful children of the X-Men out there. Nate can warp reality, resurrect the dead, resurrect himself, travel to alternate Earths and dimensions, and even manipulate the time straight. He is basically the most OP of characters when it comes to the Marvel Universe. And if you've seen artwork of him, you will probably recognize him as someone who looks like Mutant Jesus, which yes, he is god level, so that is the point. Number 10. Bishop. Bishop's powers are based in energy manipulation, as so many other heroes from his time period were. And no, I don't mean the future, I mean the time in which he was created in the comics. The 90s. What a time. Still, Lucas Bishop is one of the few heroes who withstood the test of time and is currently a main character in the comics today, appearing as part of the Marauders team and as Red Queen Kitty Pryde's Red Bishop within the Hellfire Trading Company. I'm so happy that Bishop got to be a bishop. It's too perfect. It's so perfect. Bishop is considered an alpha level mutant and is often known for brandishing his future XSE guns, which he can recharge with any energy he has absorbed and stored. Pretty useful. We're talking near unlimited ammo, as long as he has some kind of energy coming his way. Number 9. Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, formerly known as X-23. Laura has since taken up the mantle of Wolverine after her genetic father Logan. She too is now known as Wolverine, so we get to have 2 of them on the island of Krakoa. Yay! Just like that, they gave Laura that title, but didn't feel like they had to take it away from her after Logan himself was using it again in his own self-titled series. It feels very respectful to let her keep it. Also, Laura definitely deserves our respect, as she is not only extremely durable like Logan, possessing her own healing factor, but is also an immensely skilled and deadly fighter, who you would likely not want to mess with, being trained since birth. Wolverine is currently part of the newest X-Men roster, featured in the 2021 book, but has also been an ally and member here and there throughout the years. Number 8. Sync. Everett Thomas just recently saw an amazing power boost in the comics. So amazing in fact that it actually took me forever to collect the issue in which it was featured, issue 18 of the previous X-Men run from 2019. Don't worry though, I finally tracked it down, so my collection as such is complete. Perfect. And honestly, I get why it was such a highly coveted issue. It also features Sync's rainbow aura that shines through when he is using his ability and syncing up with other mutants. Up until recently, Sync's powers gave him the ability to temporarily take on the powers of mutants near him, syncing up with them. But as of issue 18, he can now sync up with any superhuman being. And it's also been implied before that with more experience, he could take on the powers of others for longer and perhaps even permanently. Number 7. Wolverine. He's the best there is at what he does, bub. So of course Logan has to make our cut. Wolverine is one of the most popular mutants and X-Men members out there the world over, which gives him a pretty big boost when it comes to what he's capable of. Wolverine might not be Omega or even Alpha level, but he never backs down from a fight, and is not to be underestimated, as he's probably one of the most determined and often noble heroes around. Sure, you might be able to beat him initially, but due to his insane healing factor, Wolverine will often just get back up and keep coming back for more. He's also a super skilled fighter. On more than one occasion, he's taken a bullet to the head and after a few moments managed to recover and get right back up. In alternate realities, we've also seen Wolverine bombarded with energy blasts until he was nothing more than a skeleton, and he still managed to come back from that. Wolverine is tough as nails, but with a heart of gold, which is what makes him such a great X-Men member and just an overall great character. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and with that comes a lot of power and honestly probably a lot of pressure as well. Still, Lorna handles the pressure fairly well and all the other stuff that comes with being Magneto's daughter, like her mind being manipulated when she was a child. Okay, so maybe she didn't handle that whole reveal so great, but she definitely shows just how resilient she can be whenever she has to deal with some of the more challenging parts of being Magneto's heir. Polaris' powers are similar to her father's, allowing her to manipulate magnetic fields, and she is considered an alpha level mutant. More recently in the comics, while using her abilities and with the help of Krakoa, she built the X-Factor's new headquarters on the mutant island nation all in one night. Pretty impressive stuff. Number 5. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the most powerful characters out there in the comics, and while he might not be a mutant and is known for being in fact a longtime X-Men villain, neither of these things stopped him from eventually joining the team. This was all around the time that Juggy had lost most of his powers, with Kane having a falling out with Sidorak and ultimately deciding to patch things up with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. He joined the X-Men and during his time there surprisingly made a good number of friends, including the mutant known as Squid Boy. Poor Squid Boy. R.I.P. Who would attempt to blow the whistle when he found Kane in a meeting with the Brotherhood. Kane actually was operating as a mole, hoping to play along long enough to learn of the Brotherhood of Mutants' plans and warn the X-Men of them. Such a tragic story! Number 4. Magneto. Magneto obviously has to make our cut. Despite being a powerful X-Men villain, like Juggernaut, he too has been an ally to the team and even at one point was a member. Magneto had a few instances where he worked alongside the X-Men and even at one point saved them from imprisonment. He eventually attempted to join up with them but was initially denied membership by Professor X. Later, however, Magneto would ally himself with the team during their time together on Battleworld and eventually would end up joining the team and acting as a leader of sorts after Professor X was injured. During his time on the team, Magneto would also become the teacher of the New Mutants, which I love. Number 3. Storm. Storm is of course one of the most powerful mutants out there, and definitely one of the most powerful X-Men members. Not just for her amazing powers either, but also for her skills as a leader and a fighter. Recently during the pre-Hellfire Gala issue of Marauders, in honor of their valuable teammate Storm, the Marauders came together to share their favorite Storm stories and moments. We also learned just how dangerous Storm can be even without her powers, and as awesome as she is with them, I think some of my favorite Storm moments recently have actually involved her fighting hand to hand, or with her famous and perhaps endless supply of knives. We still don't really know for sure how many knives Storm has on her at all times. At the very least, we know it's 8 though. And if you want to check out that very heavy Storm issue of Marauders, you can check it out in issue 20. Number 2. Marvel Girl. Marvel Girl is one of the greatest and most powerful X-Men members out there, and really no powerful X-Men members list can be complete without her. Sadly, sort of, as I did want Storm to take my number 1 spot on this list honestly. I was really like, I really want to make Storm number 1. Jean Grey has done a lot of good and a lot of bad, but whatever side she happens to be on as Marvel Girl, Phoenix, or Dark Phoenix, the fact remains that she's always pretty unstoppable. Unless, of course, she wants to be stopped. Even back when she was originally introduced in the comics, back in issue number 1 of the Uncanny X-Men, she stood out, at least to me, as having the most potential in terms of her powers and power levels. Of course, then she'd later succumb to a bit of Princess Peach syndrome, as she would constantly be the member of the team who'd get kidnapped or in some cases be rendered useless because of the limits of how much she could mentally lift being tied to how much she could physically lift, which I don't know, doesn't seem like it should be a thing, but it was a thing at the time. Though later on her limitations could probably be explained away by the mental blocks Xavier had placed in Jean's mind to protect her and others from her insane raw power, which we'd learn about later, of course. And friends, if you also love Jean Grey as much as we love Jean Grey, we also have a really awesome Jean Grey alternates list, so if you want to learn about more powerful versions of her, you should go check that out. It's a good time. Number 1. Tempest. Just because it's hard for me to always succumb to Jean being number 1. Even though I know she deserves it, I know she's number 1, we have Tempest at her number 1 spot today. Because Tempest could literally undo anyone just like that. Like she did with Matthew Malloy, who was set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in all of existence, I'd say. His reality manipulation was off the charts. And yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents just never met. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Time travel initially for Tempest was a little tricky, as her emotions have been shown to affect her abilities, but she has also spent years working to hone them. So at this point in time, she's definitely someone you wouldn't want to piss off. Otherwise, you might go to bed one night and then never wake up again, because Tempest decided to erase you from existence. Number 10. Gambit. Gambit might not be the most powerful mutant on this list, and may sometimes be more of a background member of the team in terms of what he's up to or just in terms of fighting, but he has a lot of potential. We've seen alternate realities where the full potential of Gambit's powers were realized, putting him at an almost god level in terms of what he was actually capable of. Gambit's powers allow him to supercharge objects with kinetic energy, causing them to explode through accelerating the molecules that make up said object. He can do this to something small or something large, but the bigger the object, the longer it can take for him to charge it. He has, however, proven how dangerous he can be even just by charging smaller objects that can get up close to vital areas, such as your face and your neck, like necklaces or earrings. Boom. I would not want him to supercharge any of the object close to my face. None of my pins, please. They're like right over my heart. Yikes. Number 9. Ink. Not all X-Men members are mutants, and Ink is one prime example. Ink actually did believe he was a mutant initially, and so did the rest of the X-Men, until we learned that his tattoo artist was actually the mutant in this scenario. Through his mutant tattoo artist, Ink has different tattoos, and each give him a different power. He has even managed to channel the powers of the Phoenix Force before through a Phoenix tat, which was over his eye. Basically, we think he can have any power that his tattoo artist, Leon Nunez, gives him. We haven't seen him for a while, but he was listed in the Ten of Swords event handbook as being an active member of the X-Men, so we can assume he's somewhere on Krakoa, mostly chilling probably, but still available to use his tattoos and his powers when needed. Number 8. Cyclops. Not just powerful because of his optic blasts, but Cyclops also brings the power of his amazing tactical and leadership skills, which also adds to his power and makes him a more valuable X-Men member. I actually also just got a really cool, I just ordered like a Cyclops pin. It's gonna have his optic blast like going outside of the border of the pin. I'm so excited for it to arrive. Initially in the comics, when Cyclops first appeared, he was also made out to be the most powerful member of the team, with his optic blast being considered to be one of the most useful powers when it came to fighting enemies. At least that's what it seemed like. Every time they had someone really strong, they're like, Cyclops, use your optic blasts! Or initially they didn't call them optic blasts, but that's what we call them now, so. Cyclops is also a master of trigonometry and knows how to fire an optic blast to hit just about anything due to his insane math skills. That's truly mathematical. Number 7. Kate Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as she was once known, or Shadow Cat, is an immensely powerful mutant who can make herself and others intangible. As such, Kate proves to be a very skilled fighter when integrating her abilities into her fighting styles. She's also a protege of Wolverine's, and you can definitely see that when it comes to some of her fighting skills and some of her moves. Kate now also holds a position of power on Krakoa, being a member of the Hellfire Trading Company and allying herself with Emma Frost, the White Queen, in becoming the Red Queen of that company. Due to her unique abilities, Kate is unable to use Krakoan gates, and this is almost something that caused her to be unable to emerge from her pod when being resurrected after dying in the comics. Kate can phase people and objects and has managed to phase a giant bullet through the earth, saving all life on it, and, while Power Boost, also phased an entire planet through an amber casing. Number 6. Professor X, or just X as he's sometimes known now. Professor X has always been thought of as one of the most powerful members of the X-Men. He was the first leader and teacher of the team who not only pushed his mutants to be better, sometimes controversially so, but also showed up initially to save the day when an opponent proved to be too challenging for the heroic youngsters. Professor X can also shut off your brain, he can make you forget who you are, so he's definitely not someone you'd want to fight. Unless you got a really strong mind, I guess. Professor X has low-level telekinetic skills and powerful telepathic skills that allow him to manipulate, alter, and probe the minds of others, as well as communicate telepathically from a great distance and sense other mutants. He also is now pretty much permanently wearing Cerebro, so he's got a pretty big boost to his power levels, also acting as the important Google Drive of sorts for the mutant minds on Krakoa, so that if they die, he can use a backup of their mind to resurrect them. So he's pretty important. Number 5. Iceman. Of course Iceman has to make our cut this time around. Bobby has had such a glow up when it comes to his powers and what he's capable of since he first appeared in the comics. At one point he managed to create a flash freeze so powerful that he successfully temporarily froze over all of hell, or a version of hell at least. It's kinda hard to tell in Marvel Comics sometimes. He's also managed to change states, allowing him to travel vast distances quickly as he moves through and as water. He can also manipulate water as well as ice and snow. Not only that, but he's managed to use his powers to create clone-like life forms, creating ice or snow clones to aid him and his allies in battle. Iceman has come a long way from being a snowman lookalike sporting his little black booties in his early days. I do miss those black booties though. Where they at? Number 4. Rogue. Rogue is definitely one of the most powerful mutants out there. She also happens to be one of my all-time favorites. Something about wanting to be closer to people but always kind of feeling like you were so removed from them, or had to for some reason keep your distance. The idea of like guarding yourself. Those feelings of isolation just really spoke to me, and honestly still sometimes do. Although it should be noted that Rogue has since come much more into her own, with her gaining more control over her power, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about hurting those she cares for. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch, and abilities too, so it's not just like superhuman people that she can take the skills of. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force energy of whoever she makes contact with. I mean, drawback and a plus in some cases. It turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us. Her own fear of being close close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that self-realization, that basically therapeutic work, that she was able to take control of her abilities. So if you see her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics recently, that's why. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you don't have to be afraid. Unless you're one of the baddies, of course. And then be afraid. And probably run. Number 3. Moira X. Moira X is also known to many of us still by the name Moira McTaggart. Though it was unknown for many years, Moira herself is a mutant. She was thought to be a human member and ally to the X-Men for many years, but in House of X it was revealed that Moira is actually a mutant whose power is reincarnation. But not in the traditional sense of reincarnation. After Moira dies, she doesn't just come back to life as like a new person, she lives her life all over again from the beginning. According to Destiny, Moira will likely only live through 10 lives, perhaps 11 if she makes the right plays, meaning that she isn't immortal, but she does bring with her to each life more and more knowledge in terms of how events can play out, which has brought us to the life and reality that she exists in today, with the fantastically powerful mutant island nation of Krakoa. Krakoa basically would not exist without Moira, which to me seems pretty powerful. All that knowledge. And I see her with Destiny's journals. What is she doing? What's going on? Number 2. Kid Omega. Kid Omega is Quentin Quire, another very feasible Phoenix Force host. Despite being younger and somewhat less experienced, and the running gag at the beginning of the Dawn of X era where he'd pretty much die each issue, he is still considered to be extremely powerful. Quentin is an Omega level telepath and telekinetic. He is also hyper intelligent due to his capacity to think at high speeds and the way his mind organizes thoughts. He can accomplish feats that not even the immensely powerful mutant Rachel Summers could manage, which is pretty impressive. Rachel Summers is also pretty powerful. Rachel Summers should also be on one of these lists. Number 1. Vulcan. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful, and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw a fraction likely of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house is located. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, showing mercy initially, but when provoked his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was left basically traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Vulcan is believed to be beyond even Omega levels when it comes to his powers. Number 10. Noir. In Marvel's Noirverse of Earth 90214, the X-Men are actually troubled youth and delinquents who are brought together by Charles Xavier, a controversial psychiatrist who believed that sociopathy was the next state of human evolution. Instead of attempting to redeem the youth whom he took into his school, the Xavier School for Exceptionally Wayward Youth, he worked to train them even further in their criminal arts. While some of them were exceptionally dangerous, at the end of the day, this version of the X-Men were just young criminals who were humans. So yeah. But they did have guns, so there is that. Number 9. 1602. The X-Men of Earth 311 are surprisingly powerful for the time period in which they live, 1602. In this reality, mutants are instead called Witchbreed, and the team of X-Men are an Elizabethan reflection of the Earth 616 original team. Carlos Xavier is their teacher and head, while Scotius Summerisle is their leader and is joined by the ice-wielding Robert Trefusis, a beast like Henry McCoy, and the powerful telekinetic and telepath disguised as a boy, Jean Grey. Together, this team managed to help save their reality when a rift was caused due to all these heroes basically coming into existence so early, destabilizing it. In the end, Jean died from overuse of her powers, making her weaker than her 616 counterpart, but overall, the team is still pretty strong, especially for this time period, like I said. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, I don't know if there's 10 more alternate versions of the X-Men, but we can definitely do something in this realm. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Earth Z. The X-Men were some of the last heroes standing up against the zombie horde on Earth 2149, or Earth Z. While Professor X was quickly devoured, Magneto stepped in to become the leader and encouraged the X-Men to fight to kill their opponents, as opposed to just, trying to hold them off. Otherwise, he warned the heroes would easily be overcome. Gone were the days of fighting to incapacitate their enemies. Wolverine himself seemed very much on board with this, and when Nick Fury called a meeting of the surviving heroes to explain the situation on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, many of the X-Men could be spotted amongst their numbers. Surviving in Marvel Zombies even just for that initial wave is pretty impressive, considering how many iconic and powerful heroes didn't make it. In fact, when they're with Nick Fury, I'm pretty sure I counted 9 of them, which I think is pretty Pretty impressive. Number 7. Days of Future Past. The X-Men team from Earth 811 didn't do too hot and ultimately ended up trapped in a post-apocalyptic situation where the world was ending and Sentinels were killing just about everything. Although they ultimately failed in their attempt to travel to the past to fix it to save the future, with Rachel Summers transporting Kitty Pryde back in time to the body of her younger self, Kitty still found a way to save the day when she returned as Widget, and with help from an alternate Excalibur team and alternate Rachel Summers, deprogrammed the Sentinels, turning them into Protectrons of a sort who would work to defend the mutants instead of destroy them. Basically, I feel like Days of Future Past is just powerful because of Kitty, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, Kitty's pretty powerful, Kitty and Rachel, so that's all we really need. Number 6. Ultimate, or Ultimates, if you will. Earth 1610. In the Ultimate reality, the X-Men were born out of a break between Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto's Eric Lehnsherr. Here, the two were friends and like-minded individuals for a time who together founded the Brotherhood of Mutants. They lived together with their students in peace and harmony on the Savage Land, until a falling out drove them apart, due to Magneto believing in ruling humankind and Xavier disagreeing with that. Magneto was the one responsible for Professor X losing his ability to walk and ending up in a wheelchair, and Professor X ended up creating his own mutant group called the X-Men. Later, during the X-Men's fight against Magneto during Ultimatum, many members of the team died, but a few of the most powerful did manage to survive. The team members that survived included Jean Grey, Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Rogue, Iceman, and Storm. And I think that was pretty much it, actually. Ugh. Number 5. The Brotherhood of Evil X-Men from the Future. So this team isn't really a straight up alternate X-Men team, as the name implies. I'm cheating just a little bit here. However, they did pose as the true future X-Men when they showed up in Battle of the Atom, and I really like them, so I'm just gonna count them, because I do the lists, so I get to decide what folks we include. Cool? Cool. This team also has some of my favorite overall members, with Charles Xavier II appearing as the leader, and also boasting of a roster including and formerly including Zorn, Jean Grey, an Ice Hulk version of Bobby Drake, an insane version of Beast, Raze, Deadpool, and a much more powerful Molly Hayes, who doesn't succumb to exhaustion after using her super strength. Which is pretty scary, because Molly Hayes is pretty strong. Number 4. The Dark X-Men. The Dark X-Men is Norman Osborn's team of mutants who were brought together in response to unrest in the mutant community during the events of Dark Reign. Honestly, I feel like between number 5 on this list and number 4, it really could have gone either way, so let me know if you feel like, you know, the future fake X-Men should have gone above, because I was very on the fence about this. Initially, Norman Osborn was not allowed to get involved with the mutants, but after riots broke out, he was able to finally make his own X-Men team, which he declared to the public was the real X-Men team, declaring the real X-Men team Outlaws. Fortunately, it turned out both the team leader Emma Frost and Namor the Submariner, who, when pitted against the true X-Men, turned on their own dark X-Men teammates. I didn't even talk about the other people on this roster, but there were lots of cool people. Number 3. Extreme X-Men. Extreme X-Men Volume 2 is an X-Men series and a team that takes a page out of the Exiles book, not to be confused with Chris Claremont's Extreme X-Men roster led by Storm in Volume 1 of that series. This version, written by Greg Pak, is a multiversal team of heroes who hail from various alternate realities. Seriously, I love this series. It's 1, really pretty, and 2, it's just really cool. The team is typically led by the main continuity Dazzler, Allison Blair. The team roster included such amazing members as Sage, Earth 12025 Hercules, boyfriend of the James Howlett of that reality, the James Howlett from Earth 12025 himself, Emmeline Frost Summers, an OP godlike immortal version of Emma Frost who is married to Scott in her reality of Earth 52012, Corporal Scott Summers from the American Civil War base reality of Earth 70213, a younger version of Kurt nicknamed Kid Nightcrawler, and a floating Xavier head. So many great people. Number 2. Age of Apocalypse. I would say the Age of Apocalypse version of the X-Men has to be one of the toughest versions out there, which shouldn't come as a surprise as, like eventually happened on Earth Z, Magneto also kinda ended up becoming their leader after the death of Xavier. Although in the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295, many things are different. Rogue and Magneto end up getting kinda married, with another kind of odd relationship developing between Storm and Quicksilver that also kinda makes sense given this reality, and Cyclops ends up working for Apocalypse, who rules the world. Another major difference is that in this reality, Charles was actually killed before he could ever form the X-Men, meaning that Magneto was their one true leader here. Number 1. Future X-Men. Personally, I think the future X-Men that we meet in Battle of the Atom, the real future X-Men of Earth 13729 that is, are pretty nuts. I mean, they have Widget on their team. Widget! And they also have a wizard version of Iceman who goes by the name Ice Wizard now, and Wiccan as one of their members as well. I don't know about you, but it doesn't really sound like it gets better than that. Jubilee also takes up the mantle of Wolverine in this reality, which is adorable, and Logan goes on to become the new professor, being known as Professor Logan, which I love. Number 10. Kristoff and Kadira Von Doom. Kristoff and Kadira Von Doom are the children of Storm and Doctor Doom. They come from the novel series X-Men The Chaos Engine, which is actually a trilogy wherein we explore what would happen if 3 great villains took control of the Marvel Universe, creating their own version of a perfect world using the Cosmic Cube. It starts off with Doom's variation on this world. In this reality, Doctor Doom has made Storm his wife, and she rules by his side as his Empress. The union of these powerful characters produces 2 children, Kristoff and Kadira. We can assume, of course, being the children of both Doom and Storm, that they would be physically, mentally, and demonstrably powerful when it came to their abilities, especially being raised by these 2 powerhouses. Also, if I wasn't clear about this is an alternate reality, so if you're like, when did this happen? It is not main continuity. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more children of the X-Men, they have a lot of kids if we, surf through the multiverse, so we could do it for you. If you want that part 3, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Nocturne. Nocturne is the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Obviously, not from the main continuity. In fact, Talia Wagner is known for being a part of a multiversal hero team, the Exiles. Nocturne is from the alternate reality of Earth 2182. In fact, back on her home reality, which first appeared in Millennial Visions, Talia is also known as a member of the X-Men team, fighting alongside her father, Nightcrawler, who is actually their field leader. She is a low-level telepath with incredible superhuman agility skills, the ability to wall crawl, and the ability to fire powerful brimstone hex energy bolts, something inherited from both her father and her mother. Nocturne's physical appearance is also similar to her father's, a bit demonic looking, and of course, blue. All my blue X-Men. Top 10 blue X-Men. Actually, I feel like there's a lot of X-Men that are blue. Or mutants that are blue, maybe? There's a lot of blue mutants, for sure. I don't know about X-Men team members. Number 8. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy Hudson is the son of Wolverine from the ultimate reality of Earth 1610. His powers are similar to his father's, but in this reality they're believed to work a little bit differently. As opposed to just being insane healing powers, Jimmy's power set in this universe as a mutant is believed to be based more in survival. So these powers aren't necessarily just about healing, but survival instincts and capability, meaning that Jimmy is just much better at surviving and evolving to survive than anyone else alive on the planet. And I mean that because in this reality, Wolverine eventually dies, so really Jimmy is the only one left alive who's really good at surviving. Jimmy Hudson has also been bonded to a poison before and gained control of his poison, which are basically alien-like beings resembling symbiotes in look and abilities, but ultimately a different alien race themselves, called poisons. So yeah. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine and Magneto's wife, Magda Lencher, although Wolverine urges him through a letter when the truth of his connection to Jimmy is revealed that he actually shouldn't focus too much on, who his biological parents are. Jimmy was raised by adoptive parents. His dad actually served with Logan in the war and agreed to look after Jimmy in his father's place, even giving the young boy his own family name. Hudson. Number 7. Esme. Esme is one of the main Stepford Cuckoos. Well, I mean, I guess they're all pretty main, but you know what I mean. She's probably one of the most well-known if we're talking offhand about how many of the Cuckoos you can name. Esme and the other Cuckoos are basically like the children of Emma Frost, although as I've said before, not children that she had consensually. And I didn't say that before in this list, but if you've heard me talk about the Stepford Cuckoos and their relation to Emma, yeah. Instead, these were lab babies basically made from Emma's eggs that were stolen from Emma while she was in a comatose state. Esme, like the other Cuckoos, is kind of like a genetic clone as well as a child of Emma's, and Emma actually does consider the Cuckoos to be like her daughters. She treats them as though they were her own flesh and blood, and often her own responsibility, kinda stepping in to like play mom sometimes, although she does give them freedom to make their own mistakes. I guess what I mean is Emma isn't known for being like a controlling kind of parent. She's like, I'm here when you need me, otherwise you do you. More recently in the comics, Esme, known for her diamond form and powerful telepathic abilities, teamed up and primarily dated young Cable. Well, Technically all the cuckoos were dating him at one point, though I would say Esme was basically the main squeeze of young Cable, and the sister that he was most taken by while he was dating all of them. And if you're like, whoa, how did that happen? The Stepford cuckoos, they share things because they're kind of like a hive mind. So they're like, we'll just all date this person. It's cool. Also Krakoa. Everyone's dating everyone. Number 6. Akahiro. Akahiro is the son of Wolverine and his wife Itsu. Unfortunately, before Akahiro was even born, his life took a turn for the worse. Along with inheriting his father's powers, I think he also inherited some of his tragic luck. Wolverine has the worst luck, I think. His mother Itsu was killed before she could give birth to him, assassinated. The child was believed dead, but in reality he had been cut from her womb and possibly, due to his inherited healing powers, miraculously survived. Although that's not clear, because usually your powers don't manifest until puberty, but sometimes your powers manifest when you're in the womb. I mean, look at Professor X with Cassandra Nova. Apparently that's a thing that happened. Akahiro would grow up and become a pawn of the villain known as Romulus. For most of his life, he'd also be known as Daken, a cruel nickname given to him when he was a child, being raised by his adoptive parents. The nickname was given to him because of his mixed race appearance, being part American and part Japanese. Though to be clear, his parents weren't the ones that gave it to him. It was people around his parents. Akahiro's powers are similar to Wolverine's, though his bone claws are a little bit different in terms of placement and appearance. Like his father, Akahiro is also known for being a skilled fighter as well. The apple does not fall far from the tree when it comes to fighting abilities. Number 5. Xandra Naramani. Xandra is Professor X's daughter, who is created out of his genetic material and that of his lover's genetic material, the Shi'ar Magistrix Lilandra Naramani, after both of them were believed dead. As such, Xandra grew up to become Shi'ar royalty and also spent a good amount of her life hunted because of this, with various parties attempting to use her for their own means. Xandra is an extremely gifted telepath. She can manipulate others' minds, read minds, and can create hyper-realistic telepathic illusions. Number 4. Ruby Summers. She was the ex-offspring used in our oh-so-clickable thumb for the part 1 to this list, and although she was on my extended list for that part 1, my long brainstorm that I came up with, I didn't get around to talking about her because I kind of reached a point where there were too many Summers children on that list, and I was like, I don't want to make this a top 10 children of Cyclops. We got that list, and also that's not what this list is. What can I say? Sykes got strong genes. That's why Mr. Sinister is so obsessed after all and is known as the #1 fan of the Summers Club. Scott Summers is Ruby's dad in the alternate reality she hails from, and Emma Frost is her mother. This makes Ruby fairly powerful, not at the level of Hope or X-Man, but still pretty impressive. She's also super cool looking, which is an added bonus. Ruby hails from the alternate Earth of 1191, the home reality of famous X-Men ally Bishop. Ruby is also capable of emitting optic blasts like her dad and his brothers, but she has more control over when and how she emits these blasts, unlike her dad who's like, I literally need a visor. Ruby also comes with her Ruby form, which like her mother's Diamond form, grants her invulnerability and pretty much immortality. Number 3. Olivier Raven. Olivier Raven is legally known as Olivier LeBeau and is one of the alternate reality children of Gambit and Rogue. Honestly, I feel like there are not enough of these kids out in the multiverse. I don't know if that's just me. For a couple as famous as Gambit and Rogue, I mean, you would think that we'd have a lot more kids from them, at least through the multiverse. Though admittedly, I'm not quite sure that Rogue and Gambit are really the kid having type, at least from what I've seen in the main continuity. They seem pretty content with just having their fur babies right now. So maybe they just aren't super into having kids as a family. Olivier hails from the reality of Earth 41001, the reality of Gen Next, a group Ollie is part of. He has powers similar to his mother's, except he has better control over them and is able to choose when and how much power, life energy, and memories he absorbs via physical contact, or doesn't absorb in cases where he just, wants to make physical contact without using his powers. He can also absorb powers on a more permanent level, although he has less control it seems over when this happens. Like his father, he also seems to have some charm-based powers. Either that, or he's just charming. Number 2. Proteus. Proteus is the son of Moira McTaggart, who before I would count more as like an ex-ally, but with recent revelations we can definitely consider her a member in the same way we might consider someone like Charles Xavier. It turns out that Moira herself was a mutant this whole time, possessing unique reincarnation powers. She has also been known for being a leader and teacher of X-Men groups before, including the time when she led a team that Professor X then recruited, sending them into Krakoa to rescue rescue the original X-Men. Not Krakoa as we know it now, but Krakoa as it was back in the day when it was like a monster island. Proteus is Kevin McTaggart, son of Joseph and Moira McTaggart. He is currently one of the 5 on Krakoa, and his powers as part of that team are mainly used to warp reality, allowing the non-viable eggs that Egg, formerly known as Gold Balls, produces to become viable for life. These eggs are then used to grow new versions of fallen mutants. Proteus is an Omega level mutant who requires hosts to survive. Initially, Kevin had a body, but now he's basically just pure energy. The hosts he controls and feeds off of eventually are exhausted and killed by that energy drain, making him not just a powerful psionic mutant, but also a powerful energy vampire as well, unintentionally. Number 1. Legion. Legion is the son of Professor Charles Xavier that was conceived when he had a love affair with Gabrielle Haller, which is where Legion gets his legal last name, as his given name is David Haller. Legion is so powerful because he suffers from a severe dissociative identity disorder, where he has more than 100 personas residing within him. Each persona has a number, many of names, and they each have their own specific power set that show up whenever they take over. Because of this, there is almost nothing that Legion isn't capable of. He can manipulate matter and time. We've seen him time travel and completely warp reality as a result of his possible abilities. He also has some pretty powerful hair, which I gotta say, I'm happy that he still rocks even now in the current modern day comics. He's still got that sweet hair. So tall.
Number 10. Thunderbird. aka John Proudstar, Thunderbird made his comic book debut in Giant Size X-Men issue 1, and during his childhood on the Apache Reservation in Camp Verde, Arizona, John wasn't like the other kids on the reservation. He grew up extremely strong and he became an athlete, and at just the age of 20 his mutant powers manifested when he wrestled a charging bison with his bare hands. That's a lot of strength. Now this earned him fame on the reservation, so much so that Charles Xavier caught wind of the young man through Cerebro and invited him to join the X-Men. The first mission John took was actually the rescue of the original X-Men from Krakoa. Xavier then gave him the nickname Thunderbird. Now Apocalypse experimented on Thunderbird and transformed him into the Horseman of War at one point. Now fortunately this didn't last forever, as he broke free of Apocalypse's mind control and began getting his life back together. You can find all this in Exiles issue 1. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, you can go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It really does help our studio out a lot. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for supporting Top 10 Nerd. Now back to this list. Number 9, Wither. Making his first appearance in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 3, Wither, aka Kevin Ford, grew up thinking he was cursed, or he was the most unlucky person on the planet. His mutant power started to manifest, and he noticed it first in his plants and then on his clothes. See, his plants would die and his clothes would start to fade away. They would start to decay, almost wither away. Now we get it. Now his father tried to calm him down once he realized this, but coming into contact with Kevin, well, you could have guessed what happens. He was soon discovered and was invited to join Xavier's Institute to learn how to control his wild powers of organic decay. He got close with Wallflower, aka Laurie Collins, but in the House of M storyline, he touched her arm and crippled her. He ran away hurt and was soon met by Selene, the Black Queen, and she invited Wither to join her circle, and he gladly accepted. Number 8. Polaris. She's a powerful mutant who came to control magnetism, and she made her first appearance in X-Men 49 as Lorna Dane, but then in issue 97, she was Polaris. Cerebro identified her as a mutant when she stepped out of the shower and had green hair. So Iceman had a crush on her when she was part of the team, but she was in love with Havoc. Her powers are of course similar to Magneto's, but she lost them after the M-Day event as well. So when Apocalypse came into the picture, he also restored her powers, as she was deemed the Horseman Pestilence. She was saved by her lover man Havoc and was also healed of Apocalypse's mind control. So again, didn't last too long, but definitely did see enough dark days. Number 7, Glob Herman. Glob Herman, aka Robert Herman, made his debut in New X-Men issue 117, and he grew up with a father who despised mutants a lot. So already we're off to a promising start. So when Glob mutated, his father was just not having it. So much so that his mother drove out Glob to Westchester and left him for Professor X. See, this mutation was interesting. His skin was this transparent living wax, which he's able to maintain being on fire, which is kind of cool. He runs with the New Mutants now, but at one point he did join the Omega Gang, led by Kid Omega, and they made their own stand for mutant rights. See, Glob wasn't a fan of the school, and he also had a grudge by the way that his father treated him. So he had a pretty harsh take on how to treat humans. Poor Glob. I mean, he had a rough childhood, not exactly his fault here at all. Number 6, Kid Omega. Okay, that guy that I just mentioned, of course, I'll fill you in a little bit on him as well and what gang that he was a part of. Quintavious Quinton Quirinius made his first appearance in X-Men issue 134, and he has been described as one of the most powerful telepaths, one of the most strongest mutants ever besides Jean Grey. He was once the host of the Phoenix Force as well, so that should give you any indication. He was one of Xavier's prized pupils until he put together the Omega Gang, which was a gang that takes out humans for the crimes they committed against mutants. He even went to a tattoo shop to get him and the gang tattoos of an Omega symbol to put over top of the X-Men symbol. So they weren't playing around here. I mean, at least try wash off tattoos first. I mean, give it some thought, you know, those things are forever. Number 5, Banshee. Making his first appearance in X-Men issue 28, Sean Cassidy was born as the heir to the castle and estate of Cassidy Keep in Ireland. Professor Xavier asked him to join the X-Men at the same time as Thunderbird, and they both stayed as members of the new X-Men. He went on to train the new generation of X-Men and Generation X, but was killed during Deadly Genesis when he tried to stop the Blackbird from crashing when it was taken over. Banshee remained one of the unliving until the Apocalypse twins resurrected him using the Death Seed, thus becoming the Horseman of Death himself. Later on, he ended up in the custody of the X-Men when Beast thought it was best to put him in a coma until the healing of Death Seed energy is complete. Number 4, Jubilee. Making her first appearance in Uncanny X-Men issue 244, Jubilee, aka Jubilation Lee, first discovered her mutant powers of generating this blinding and explosive blast from her hands. She was discovered by Dazzler, Cyclops, Rogue, and Storm during a rescue at the mall. And when she followed the women through the portal, she ended up at the X-Men's temporary base in the Australian outback. So she stayed there hiding, and then when the Reavers captured Wolverine and took over their base, she borrowed the X-Men's clothes and made a suit for herself. So she went and rescued Wolverine and aided him back to health. She's already an X-Men, look at that, just like that. So Jubilee and Wolverine ended up becoming a good pair, working missions together, and then a vampire ended up infecting the area of Union Square and Curse of the Mutants, and Jubilee, being caught in the path of this infection, ended up becoming a vampire herself. And in perfect harmony, she in the story ends up infecting Wolverine during her bloodthirsty time. And he was coming back to rescue her as well when it all happened. She's kept in a holding cell where Wolverine is really the only X-Men saying that they should keep her alive. So rough times, rough times. Number 3, Tattoo. AKA Christine Korn, she made her first comic book debut in New X-Men issue 126. She's a student of the Xavier Institute, and she's known as Tattoo, well, because her mutation allows her to display messages or designs on her skin. And if that's not cool enough, she can phase through matter. So, coolest mutant ever, okay? She's also one of the Omega Gang members, and one time, her and the other members, led by Quentin Quire, started a riot at Xavier Institute during opening day celebrations. So Tattoo actually phased her hand into Cyclops' head, and then told him that if she became solid, he wouldn't survive to see the end of it. But then, Emma Frost reverted the trick by turning into Diamond, and then putting her hand into Tattoo's head to prevent her from taking out Cyclops. What a confusing sight to see. Superheroes are so cool. And at one point, she also attacked Beast and Wolverine, but she was being controlled by Cassandra Nova, so. Number 2, Rachel Summers. She's the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey in an alternate universe on Earth 811, and she makes her first appearance in X-Men 141, the Days of Future Past story. So she was born from the Phoenix Force merging with Jean, so she got the abilities of a telepath and of a telekinetic. She was raised at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters when she met Franklin Richards and became really close. Now one day the school was attacked by federal troops, and she was one of the only survivors. She was taken in by the crazy Ahab, where she was brainwashed and became the mutant Hound, where she used her psionic powers to hunt down other mutants. Her time as this horrible mutant hunter weighed heavy on her conscience afterwards. I mean, she even got her face marked up by these guys. It was just an all bad situation. And finally, number 1, Pyro. Pyro was once a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and in X2, we see him hanging out with Iceman and Rogue. By the end of the movie, he switches over to Magneto's side, facing off against Bobby. And in the comics, Simon Lasker makes his first appearance as Pyro in X-Men Gold, Volume 2, Issue 1, when Mesmero tricks him into believing he's Charles Xavier, and he joins the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So not good on screen, not good in the comic books. Still a cool character, just likes to dip into the dark side.
Number 10, Deadly Genesis. We can talk about different X-Men and mutant teams here, but I'd also like to touch on some of the rosters as well that you may have forgotten about. This one might be due to selective memory loss, or it could just be because you haven't read the story yet. We are talking here about the X-Men Deadly Genesis limited series, which revealed the next team sent into Krakoa after the X-Men team we know went missing. This team wasn't necessarily a bad one at all. In fact, all of these mutants are kind of super powerful, but they were all basically introduced in this short series, which didn't really help to make us care as much about them as we could have. All in all, this story just had a very early 2000s feel to it. Not that that's a bad thing. The Deadly Genesis X-Men team were a group of kids that Moira McTaggart was trying to help out. She didn't even really see them as students, and then Charles recruited them and turned them into X-Men. The team consisted of Sway, Petra, Vulcan, and Darwin, who have all recently reappeared in the Dawn of X line, in case you were wondering where they made their first appearance. Number 9. Xavier's Security Enforcers. One that we might forget about every now and then is the mutant team that Bishop originally belonged to from the alternate dystopian future that he hails from. I believe this Earth is 1191, but I could be mistaken on that. Didn't even write down my Earth number. Bothers me. This mutant team is known as the XSE, which stands for Xavier's Security Enforcers. If you know Bishop well and you're a big fan, you likely know this team well, but for those who are new to the character, you might not know about this group of enforcers. The point of the team that Bishop was part of was to preserve the long-dead Professor Charles Xavier's dream, where mutants and humans could exist in harmony, living peacefully together. Bishop has even been known to wield specific future equipment, which he got from XSE, although we haven't seen them in a while. All members of the team wear their mutant tattoo brands like a badge of honor, and the members have included Randall, Malcolm, and Bishop's sister Shard, among others over the years. Before we hop into our number 8 spot, I just want to thank all of you for being here and give you a quick reminder to click that like if you are enjoying this video. It really does help us out. Number 8. Nasty Boys. You might remember the original villainous Marauders team, but do you remember Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys? Don't worry if you have, because I will never let you forget. Well, both the Marauders and Nasty Boys teams are villainous teams. I couldn't have an obscure mutant team list and not seize the opportunity to remind you all of the Nasty Boys, so here we are. I also just love this name for the team. I personally always read Mr. Sinister with like the most outlandish, flamboyant, yet manipulative pseudo-English accent, so for me it's very fitting that he decided to name his team this. Nasty Boys, so perfect. It fits perfectly with the voice that I have for him in my mind. The Nasty Boys were the team that came after the Marauders. Instead of Gambit being involved in the team, Multiple Man was the generally heroic mutant who got involved. Originally, the team saw Ruckus as leader, with Slab, Gorgeous George, Ramrod, and Hairbag making up the roster. Gorgeous George even resurfaced in Dawn of X more recently. Yay! I might be the only one, but I'm still kinda hoping that the Nasty Boys as well will make a return. Bring them back. Bring them back. Number 7. Outback. When it comes to X-Men rosters as teams, one of the best but shortest running roster is the Outback team. This era for the X-Men team lasted less than 25 issues, but was still so good that people still talk about it today. Now if you missed this one and you've never heard of it, it's one that you actually probably should read. Not one of my silly points, more one of my serious and beloved forgotten teams on this list. The team started off in issue 229 of Uncanny X-Men, with Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Dazzler, Longshot, Havoc, and Psylocke on it. We'd also see Jubilee introduced during this roster's time together. The Outback team is noted as being one of the best rosters for the X-Men when it comes to having a group who truly feel like outsiders. Also, you get to enjoy the Inferno story in this run, which is bizarre and magical, so you're welcome for that. Number 6. X-Corps. No, I'm not talking about the X Corporation, which has yet to come out, but is still coming our way. Thank goodness. I thought that book was going to be firmly cancelled, but fortunately it has been revived. I'm so ready for X Corporation, let's go. When we talk about X-Corps, we are talking about Banshee's team. He formed this team after Generation X disbanded, and most of the team were composed of that era of mutants. This team was made up of former villains turned heroes and was created to act as a police force basically for the mutant community. Joining Banshee were the Blob, Avalanche, Fever Pitch, Jubilee, Husk, and M, aka Monet. The X-Men team actually did not approve of this team's creation and actually attempted to get Banshee to disband it. In the end, Mystique infiltrated the team and liberated its members, especially the villains, who were being manipulated into behaving heroically by Mastermind under Banshee's orders. Number 5. Extreme X-Men. This X-Men roster marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran till 2004. It was a team team that featured my girl Rogue as the leader, woohoo, which you know I'm all about. The original Extreme X-Men roster also featured Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird on the team. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added to the mix throughout. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats. As you do when you're on an X team. Number 4. Generation Hope. This one is from the 2010 series Generation Hope and was under Cyclops' banner ultimately following the events of Regenesis. Though the team itself was led by mutant messiah Hope Summers, and its roster consisted of No Girl, Pixie, Primal, Sebastian Shaw, Transonic, Velocidad, and Zero at that time. Though originally Hope's team started pre-Regenesis as just being 5 mutants including Hope herself, with Velocidad, Oya, Primal, and Transonic on the team. The team was a search and rescue group who were brought together as they were acknowledged as being 4 of the 5 lights on Cerebra. Hope basically triggered the rebirth of the mutant gene, activating these mutants. The 5th light was what they sought and kind of why they came together, heading to Tokyo, Japan. Zero was the mutant they sought, who would eventually join the team, although originally would be antagonist. Number 3. X-People. You probably forgot about this team just because their name is, well, super forgettable, but they are actually from a very memorable alternate universe, the MC2, or also known as Alternate Earth 982. This Earth is the home of the beloved Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl, now known as Spider-Woman. But you know what's not so memorable from that universe? Their version of the X-Men. I mean, I get that X-People is meant to be gender neutral, more inclusive, but is that really the best name they could come up with? There has to be something that isn't X-Men that is better than that. I mean, I know there is because we have dozens of other X teams with the letter X in them that are way more catchy than X-People. Because of the Earth it is set in, X-People is a team of originally younger mutants who are now older and taking on the role of leaders, mentors, and teachers. Actually, here Jubilee is the team leader, with her core team roster including Simeon, Angry Eagle, Torque, and Spanner. Number 2. Factor 3. Factor 3? That sounds like some kind of toothpaste. This is another villainous team composed of mutants but led by an alien known as Mutant Master. You might not remember it because it was only around for a few issues and also first appeared way early on in X-Men issue 28 back in 1967. This team popped up a few times and would often force mutants into doing their bidding, often mind-controlling Banshee to attempt to kidnap or help kidnap Professor X. What a wacky time it was. Fortunately, in issue 39, Factor 3 was defeated for good and hasn't bothered the X-Men since. So we haven't seen them for a really long time. Number 1. Lightning Force. This X-Men team comes to us admittedly from an alternate reality, which might be why you've never heard of it before. But once you learn about them, you'll likely wish they had remained forgotten. Lightning Force is an X-Men team that we come across in the Exiles, who themselves belong to Earth 597. They are basically the alternate Excalibur team from their reality, a reality where the Axis won World War II. I think you know where we're going with this. Their roster is almost as surprising as the whole idea for this team. We have Herr Xavier, who helped to create the team through experimenting on them. Yikes. And leading the team we have Hauptmann England, aka Captain Britain, with Magon, aka Gloriana, Shadowcat, and Nightcrawler. Also, if you were wondering, yes, Kitty Pryde is still Jewish in this reality, which yeah, makes her character's history here pretty dark.
Number 10. Bloodstorm. Now Storm is already mistress of the elements, so quite powerful and quite interesting. But what happens when she becomes a vampire? Now this has happened briefly in main continuity, but in the Mutant X universe, it became a permanent change. The Mutant X comic series was published from 1998 to 2001, and as mentioned, it saw a very different Storm. This was after she was bitten by Dracula. Here, she was not saved, but instead became a full-fledged creature of the night. She of course had vows not to kill, so she had the vampire dilemma, which she solved by hiring some of her former teammates to let her drink from them, like Kitty Pryde. She would eventually leave the X-Men and join a team called the Six. She also turns Gambit into a vampire, even though she warns him he'll regret it, and he does. Spoilers. Listen when people warn you. Bloodstorm became a breakout character of this series. Number 9, new Sun Gambit. Speaking of Gambit, let's take a look at one of his alternate versions. This is new Sun Gambit, and he hails from Earth 9921. Gambit actually has enormous power potential that was quashed by Mr. Sinister in the main continuity, but that continuity is not all. In this other universe, he was trained to use his abilities even before he had them, and then when this was combined with his full potential and a mystic ceremony, he became something else altogether. The only thing is, the awakening of all these abilities would create a shockwave that would destroy his Earth, forcing him to travel around, and of course he ended up on the 616 Earth, where he ended up befriending Gambit and trying to help him along his way, but didn't tell him who he was. It was after his reveal and Gambit's subsequent disgust that he changed his name to New Sun. Some fans like seeing the full unleashed potential on display of Gambit. Number 8, Basilisk. Not all alternate versions that people like have happy outcomes. Case in point, Basilisk from Earth 11326, an Earth also known as Age of X. Here, Cyclops was incarcerated in a mutants-only facility after the manifestation of his powers as a teenager killed several people, including his parents. He captured the attention of the prison warden Arcade because of his power set, so he made him this very special mask. It looks a lot like the Skull mask from Persona 5, and it's something that people like about this character. In fact, for many, it's what makes him cooler. It is a very menacing looking mask. Now, a lot of this universe had to do with Legion, one of its personalities, and manifesting another world. So for some, it was just a cool concept in general. The mask looked great. Loved the mask. Number 7, Soldier Supreme. Here we have an amalgamated character from Warp World. This was the universe that was created when Gamora had the Infinity Gauntlet, put everybody's souls into the Soul Gem, and then folded that universe in half. As a result of this, the characters were merged and fused together. So you have Marvel characters smushed, and one of those was Captain America, Steve Rogers, and Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. So I mean, they kind of already had the same name, just spelled differently, so it made it a bit easier. Back there, Dr. Stephen Rogers, but now with a PH. Their stories actually don't fuse too badly. It's World War II, and Stephen Rogers is contracted for a super secret soldier experiment, only it turns out it's a cover for a mystical ceremony instead of for, you know, the scientific one that he actually undergoes. But these mystic rituals still end up enhancing his strength and allowing him to connect with the occult, and he becomes Soldier Supreme. So he has Cap's cowl, but he still has like a mustache. And he was actually one of the heroes who objected to Warp World being completely destroyed at the end of the arc by Adam Warlock. So Warlock found a way to let it still exist and let these characters still exist. It was one of those loopholes. Stephen Rogers did that and kept being a hero. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Would any of our nerd lists be complete without mentioning Old Man Logan? Yes they would, but it just keeps coming up. It's a staple here on Top 10 Nerd. Well, this story is one of the most popular alternate universe stories out there, and it has a famously gross confrontation between the Hulk and Wolverine, or Logan, because he's not Wolverine anymore in this story. Here we have a grizzled old man Logan fighting his way across a supervillain-controlled America, trying to keep his claws sheathed after what he did, which, spoilers, was somehow managing to kill most of the X-Men. This was because he fell for an illusion created by Mysterio. This is a must-read for many fans and a fave Wolverine story for others. Number 5, Ex-Apes. The X-Men are monkeys, or rather apes. This, funnily enough, spawned off of the Marvel Zombies universe and event. Basically, they're trying anything. That event was just so popular. This did not turn out to be quite the hit that was, but I mean, few things can. But this universe still has its fans. Actually, everybody in this universe are apes or monkeys or animals of some kind. So really, if you enjoy this concept, it's just the whole universe, and you have people like the Ape Avengers and Dr. Octopus. It's made for a certain type of pun-loving individual. It's a bit niche, but for some it sparks joy. Number 4, Witch Breed. For this we have to go for Neil Gaiman of Sandman fame's 1602 Marvel Comics contribution. It is also an alternate universe story. In this universe, the Marvel universe is all happening by Elizabethan times, 1602. There, mutants exist, but they are known as Witch Breed. This is because they are thought to be the spawn of demons or witches. Or both. They are creatures to be hunted down, but they find safe haven in Xavier's select college for sons of gentlefolk, a school that causes great concern for Sir Nicholas Fury because he sees the potential of all these students as soldiers, which, let's not lie, that's part of what Xavier is doing. Again, this is a universe where people tend to like the whole thing, but the X-Men stand out as a distinct part, or rather, or rather the witch breed. Number 3, X-Babies. Versions of your favorite characters as babies or kids. This is a concept that is either really fun or incredibly lame depending upon who you're talking to. So the X-Babies are clones created by Mojo in the Mojoverse. This was probably inspired by an even earlier story where he had just taken the X-Men and turned them into kids, again for entertainment. Because you know, if anything goes on long enough, be it show, series, whatever, you're gonna get two things. You're gonna get a child episode and you're gonna get a musical episode. Now the X-Babies are a concept that is short-lived, but they are usually returned to. There is even an A-Babies versus X-Babies. Again, how cool you'll find these tots depends upon your tolerance for baby-related shenanigans. Number 2, Earth X. The version of the X-Men here are depressing, but all of Earth X is depressing actually. After an experiment of Reed Richards goes wrong, or seemingly that's what happened, for once it's not Reed's fault, I know, shock and awe, a population of superpowered beings is produced all over the earth, and the world drastically alters. To quote The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one is. Suddenly there's not as much of a reason to hate and fear the X-Men, and they've largely fallen apart. The one character people tend to remember the most that sticks out when they first think of this is Wolverine, who's got a beer gut and is married to Jean Grey, except it's not Jean, it's Madeline Pryor, but he keeps calling her Jean, and it's just sad. Now how exactly is this cooler, you may be asking? Well, it's all in the depiction. It's unique, it's memorable, and part of a well-received work. So for many, that's what makes it cool. And finally, in at number 1, Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. If you thought people loved Vampire Storm, then you know that they enjoy Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine has been a vampire more than once. You have what-if stories like the aforementioned Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. But you also have arcs like Curse of the Mutants, which would also be the arc that left Jubilee as a vampire for a bit. Many have fond memories of the what-if story, where upon successfully turning Storm, Dracula then turns all the rest of the X-Men. Only because of Wolverine's healing factor, he figures out how to use his powers way faster than everybody else, and so he dethrones Dracula and takes over as leader of the vampires. In fact, he leads the new vampire X-Men to take over New York. It's up to the bizarre combination of Doctor Strange and the Punisher to take him down.